Andy. So, as already introduced, we are preparing for the Financial Action Task Force Mutual Evaluation Exercise, which is scheduled to be happening in 2026. And I must also indicate that work has begun. I'm aware that recently there was some officials from the SAMLAG, East and Southern Africa Animal Laundering Group, they were in the country, trying to also start some preparatory work around the mutual evaluation exercise. And as for us, I think as we were going through the various processes around the PVO Amendment Act, you may recall that one of the objective or one of the motivation for the amendment was to ensure that as a country we comply with the FATF Recommendation 8. And as it stands right now, we are also aware that we are rated as partially compliant for this. But again, globally, I think the area of animal laundering and terrorism financing, or countering of terrorism financing and proliferation financing as well, is gaining a lot of momentum and traction. And there are quite a number of requirements that countries are required to put in place in terms of ensuring that we comply with the 40 recommendations of the FATF. And if we are to look at the recommendation 8, there has been quite a number of researches that have been conducted which indicated that there has been quite a number of unintended consequences as countries are trying to comply with recommendation 8. But also there is a requirement that for recommendation 8, you are supposed to apply the risk-based approach. And for us as a sector, what is important is to ensure that at least we mitigate against the unintended consequences, which in one way or the other has been contributing to the shrinking of the civic space. And I think for us, as we were also going through the PVO amendment bill now and act processes, we have been also, looking at how we have been applying the risk-based approach and various processes. But it is also true that as civil society, we have not been participating effectively or meaningfully on various AML CFT processes at country level. We are talking about national risk assessments, we are talking about NPO risk assessments, we are talking about mutual evaluation exercises, and many other processes. And remember, this is a very important process, especially to the country or to the government, because of the aspect of grey listing. Remember, as a country, we were removed from the grey list in 2022. And as we are preparing for the mutual evaluation, we might see ourselves again going back to grey list. So today's session is really about helping us understand, especially the mutual evaluation exercise, but also trying to look for opportunities for participation and for engagement throughout the process, and also how we can contribute to the process, what some of the measures or some of the interventions that we can actually have at the present moment to ensure that when the actual process and exercise being conducted, we are not found wanting as a sector. Like I said, the expected outcome or the aspiration is for us to make sure that we are fully compliant when it comes to recommendation 8. So without further ado, I think, allow me at this moment to call upon our key speaker, who is our key guest as well for this conference, from the Financial Intelligence Unit, to give us an overview in terms of the FATF mutual evaluation process and also the national risk assessments. And then after that, we have some panelists who are going to help us unpack and also look at some of the specifics around the mutual evaluation exercise and also how civil society can participate and what are the expectations. Allow me to call upon Mr. Tichafa Chigaba, who is the Deputy Director in the Financial Intelligence Unit, to give us the main presentation. Thank you.
Just go smart. Skip the scene. That's a good now. Wait, if that thing is that goes in the slide. So I'm going to you do it for me. Okay. Wait. Good morning, everyone. And thanks, Mr. Nyimai, for the kind words of introduction and allow me to ride on protocols already observed. So, my name is Tichafa Chigaba. As indicated, I'm Deputy Director in the Financial Intelligence Unit of Zimbabwe. My portfolio, I'm in charge of a portfolio called Financial Intelligence Analysis. So I'm responsible for all intelligence analysis in the FIU, including analysis also of the risk of terrorism financing and NPO issues. So the topic of my presentation here is the FATF Mutual Evaluation of Zimbabwe, which is coming in 2026. My presentation will focus, there is an introduction. I will talk about the current status of Zimbabwe's technical compliance and effectiveness, current status of the NPOs sector in terms of AML CFT, and then I will define the mutual evaluation and the purpose and how it goes, as well as the role of NPOs in the mutual evaluation exercise. So, what is FATF? I'm sure you all know what the FATF is. It's an intergovernmental body that was established in 1989 to deal with issues of counter money laundering. This is after the realization of the global economic community on the dangers that money laundering and later terrorism financing was posing to the economic well-being of the world. So Zimbabwe is a member of the FATF through an FATF-styled regional body called the SAMLAG. We are not, so there are countries that are direct members of FATF. These are big economies. In Africa, there is just South Africa, and until recently, there was also Nigeria. The rest of the smaller economies, they are affiliated through FATF-styled bodies, and ours is a SAMLAG. I will talk more about the SAMLAG when I discuss the mutual evaluation process. So at the moment, Zimbabwe is preparing for the third mutual evaluation, which is coming in 2026. Our first evaluation was done in 2006. The second was done in 2016. The third one is coming in 2026, 10-year gaps. But going forward, FATF has decided that we'll do this more frequently. So the next one is expected to come after 6 years, which will be, I think, around 2032. So it's becoming more frequent. So during the process, various stakeholders will participate, include the FIU, the law enforcement community, supervisory bodies such as the Ministry of Public Service, labor and social welfare, as well as private sector players, including NPOs themselves and other government agencies. The purpose of this exercise is to determine both the technical compliance and effectiveness of a country's AML CFT framework. Let me explain technical compliance. So technical compliance is when they are assessing the country's legal and institutional framework to say to what extent has Zimbabwe domesticated the FATF 40 recommendations. I'm sure you are familiar with the 40 recommendations. So we domesticate them through legal and institutional framework. So the TC or technical compliance assessment looks at that. But I'm glad to say that at the moment, at the last mutual evaluation, which was done in 2016, we were found, I think we had 20 out of 40 compliant and largely compliant. But through the follow-up process that is done by a SAMLAG, we are now at 37 out of 40. I can actually say we should be at 39 out of 40 because the recent amendments that were done, the amendment of the PVO Act, the amendment also of the MLPC Act, they largely cured the deficiencies that were there in the recommendation number 2 and recommendation number 8 to do with NPOs. So we are only left with recommendation 15, I think, which has nothing to do with the NPOs. This one has to do with new technologies, the virtual asset and virtual asset service providers. So technical compliance, we don't expect any problems. We think we are going to come out nicely there. Then we've got the effectiveness assessment. The last effectiveness assessment was done in 2016. We found it to be low effective in 9 immediate outcomes, but we were moderately effective in 2, which is immediate outcome 9 and immediate outcome 10. So immediate outcome 9, it's about the risk of TF. How well are we investigating TF? How are we prosecuting TF cases? Consistent, of course, with the country's risk of TF. We found to be moderate. We're doing well in the context of our risk. Also in IO10, effective protection of NPOs from abuse by terrorists, we also found to be moderate, consistent with our risk as well. Because you are looking at the risk and what you are doing to mitigate the risk. If your risk is low and you are doing enough, you are moderate. Yeah, so that's how it goes. So the current status now. So I'm looking at the 2016, as I think I've explained that. Zimbabwe was rated moderate in IO10, REC 8, as I have indicated, REC 8, of course, legally is standing at partially compliant because we have not yet applied for what we call re-rating. But I don't think we are going to apply for re-rating now as we are approaching mutual evaluation. Because the mutual evaluation itself is a rating process. So we submit to the mutual evaluation with our amendments to the law, and we are confident that we will come out largely compliant in that immediate outcome, in that recommendation 8. So then another requirement, the gaps that were there in our recommendation 8, it was number 1, we had not done a risk assessment. We were not aware of the risk of abuse of our NPO sector by terrorists. Number 2, we didn't have the institutional and legal framework sufficient to deal with protecting NPOs, as the amendment of the PVO Act, as well as the risk assessment. So with these 2 things, the risk assessment done, the amendment of the PVO Act done, that's why we think we are largely compliant now. So these are the findings of our risk assessment, which we did in conjunction with NANGO and all other law enforcement agencies and everyone. So the current status is we found generally our risk of NPO abuse, we found it low in the risk assessment. But what we do now, we disaggregate the various classes of NPOs and come up with the risk rating for them. So we found faith-based organizations, they had a slightly elevated risk of 0.2. The risks are measured from 0 to 1. 0.2 generally is generally low. But in our NPOs, that cluster at 0.2, so it is the highest risk in our context. Then we have international NPOs with a risk rating of 0.7, and we have trusts with 0.15, and community-based NPOs with 0.04. So that is the stratification, the risk stratification of our sectors, our NPO sectors. Okay. So after risk assessment, what happens? We are expected then to implement, as Mr. Nyima has indicated, to ensure that we prevent unintended consequences. We are supposed to implement a risk-based approach in the monitoring and protection of the NPOs from abuse by terrorists. So what do we do? What does it say? The regulator recently developed regulations. Those regulations now, they encapsulate the regulatory framework around the NPO sector. So it means priority will be given to the sector with the risk that is higher than the rest of the sectors. So the first tier, we expect the regulator, AML-CF2 supervision, will focus more on that sector. So this means, these are just examples of what the regulator will do. He may carry out on-site inspections on those on NPOs in that sector. He might require submission of off-site returns and maybe returns of audit reports and so on. But training is very important. Training will always be ongoing. For the middle sector, the second tier of NPOs with the medium, there will be less focus on that risk-based approach. You focus more where there is higher risk. Risk-based approach, so maybe the regulator, it's up to him. You may look at just submission of regulatory returns and continuous training of the sector. For the low risk sector, let's focus on that one. Maybe they just do ongoing training. That is the area of the regulator. I think you expand more on exactly what you do. But that is the spirit of the risk-based approach. And why do we do this? To prevent unintended consequences. The unintended consequences are the disruption of the good work that is being done by the NPO sector. Fine. So that's where we are. So the next part of my presentation, I'll now look at the mutual evaluation process itself. What is a mutual evaluation? Why is it done? And how is it done? So the mutual evaluation, this one, every country on this planet, member directly or indirectly of the FATF, is subjected to a mutual evaluation exercise once every 10 years in the past. Going forward, it will be once every 6 years. So this is a big audit of the country. It is an assessment of the country's posture and the preparedness for fighting money laundering, terrorism financing, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. That's what it is. But in the context of NPOs, we just focus on TF because NPOs, they don't have big risk of money laundering, proliferation, and so forth. They are just vulnerable to abuse by terrorists for terrorist financing. So that is what the mutual evaluation is all about. It has got two components: a technical compliance assessment, as I've indicated, and an effectiveness assessment. Technical compliance, just looking at the country's laws in comparison with the FATF standards. How compliant is the country? Has it domesticated all the standards through creating sufficient legal framework as well as institutional framework to deal with money laundering, TF, and proliferation? So that's technical compliance. I'll explain further how it is done. Then effectiveness, there are things called 11 immediate outcomes. These are the broad outcomes so effectiveness is a test on, okay, fine. So you have the law, you have the institutions. How well are you using your law and institutions to fight money laundering and to fight proliferation and TF? In the context of NPOs, how well are you using your law to protect your NPOs from being abused by terrorists? That's the spirit of IO10 now, which is relevant to you. So that's the effectiveness assessment. So it is done by a team of experts. So what is going to happen, as Mr. Nyima has indicated, a SAMLAG high-level team has come just to talk to it was a high-level mission, to talk to government, to advise them that we're coming and we expect your cooperation in doing our assessment for Zimbabwe, or sensitizing them as well on the outcomes that may come out of the assessment and the consequences and so forth. Yeah, so that is what it was. At this stage now, I'm sure we've now received the relevant questionnaires. Those are the documents that we complete for the assessment, right? So what are the consequences of a negative outcome in a mutual evaluation? So there are two consequences, or maybe there are three. You can pass the assessment and you're okay, you're good, you continue doing the good work. If you don't do so well, maybe I'll not go into the real technical definitions of not doing so well. If you don't do very well, you are placed on a gray list like what happened to us in the last assessment. So if you're on the gray list, these are countries, they are said countries with strategic deficiencies, but are actively working with FATF to resolve them. So it's not a good place to be in the gray list, because in all cases, the businesses will be required to exercise enhanced due diligence. Zimbabwe is not able to manage its own affairs. So if there is money that is being sent to an NPO in Zimbabwe, be careful with that money, because those guys, they are not protecting their NPOs very well. So you must take your time to make sure that that money is not coming from terrorists. What does it mean? It means that money which is coming to you may not arrive on time, or it may not come at all, because others, they get worried. The risk of sending money and it falls in the hands of terrorism is not good. It has got very adverse consequences and so forth. So that is the impact of the gray list. The blacklist is even worse. In this case now, if you are gray, the blacklist is the class where countries like the Democratic People's Republic of Korea are. The Republic of Iran. These are just two countries in the blacklist right now, Iran and... So there are severe financial sanctions when you are in the blacklist. That's a place that no one wants to go. Even the gray list, we do not want to go there again. So those are the consequences. So that is what we are planning to prevent that we don't go into the gray list, we don't go into the blacklist.
Okay.
So what is the purpose of the mutual evaluation? To, as I have indicated, assess compliance and effectiveness, identify deficiencies, and also when deficiencies are identified, countries will be required to follow up and implement the key recommended actions that will be coming out of the mutual evaluation exercise. So it's a learning exercise, but you don't want to learn, you don't want to fail when you are learning. You want to learn and pass all the time, isn't it? Yeah, so it also promotes best practices by countries, and it strengthens the purpose, major purpose, why the FATF and everyone does it. It's meant to strengthen the global financial system, to protect it from money laundering, to protect it from abuse by terrorist financiers, and to protect it from proliferators of weapons of mass destruction. So that is the purpose, and it's globally accepted. So here is the mutual evaluation process, which has already started here. It starts with the pre-evaluation preparation, like what we've been doing over the past year. We've been talking to each other, doing training, doing our usual AML CFT activities, all the things that we've done in the past 5 years, they will be evaluated in this exercise. So for all the things we did past 5 years, we have been preparing. So we do self-assessment and we collect relevant data to prove our effectiveness and so forth. Now, the first step in the mutual evaluation is the completion of what we call the TC questionnaire. So we will receive a TC questionnaire. It's just a blank form which states recommendation 1 up to recommendation 40 and explains what is expected by recommendation 1 and recommendation 2 up to 40. Country is supposed to come together and populate the legal instruments that are available in Zimbabwe to deal with the requirements of each of the recommendations. This one is called a desk review. They don't have to come here. They give us a questionnaire, populate the questionnaire, we send it back, they do their assessment, they come up with their report that, in our opinion, Zimbabwe, I think you are compliant in this one, you are not compliant in this one. They give us a chance to answer, to say, no, we had omitted another piece of legislation, or we had omitted another institution which is there, which deals with that. It's a back and forth. I think there will be draft report, second draft, and so forth, until we are agreed that, well, this is the true position of Zimbabwe in as far as technical compliance is concerned. That happens before they come into country. After that, they will send a questionnaire, effectiveness questionnaire, which has got the 11 immediate outcomes. So on TC, what is of interest to you is recommendation 8. They will be marking our recommendation 8. Have we done a risk assessment? Do we have a regulator who regulates NPOs? Has that regulator been regulating? How has he been regulating? Is there cooperation and harmony between the regulator and the regulated entities and so forth? Reg 8. On effectiveness, they'll be looking at our IO10, all the activities that we've been doing to protect NPOs. So that is what is on the questionnaire on effectiveness. Then after the questionnaire is populated, they will come into the country, because effectiveness is not proven by reading papers. You prove it by coming to see. So they will come to Zimbabwe, they will do 21 days in the country, they will interview everyone. But let me focus on the NPO sector, on recommendation 8 and IO 10. Who are they going to talk to here? They'll be talking, of course, to the National Task Force. They'll start with the Minister of Finance. They'll talk to the National Task Force, all the coordination bodies that deal with AML CFT, where you are also represented. They'll go down to the regulator. They'll have a talk with the regulator of the NPOs. They are very likely they are going to talk to NGO directors about the NPO sector and everything. Then they are going to they will ask us to pick 2 or 3 NPOs to meet the assessors, to talk to the assessors. And these ones, they will talk to the assessors in our absence. Government won't be there. It will just be them and the assessors. What are they going to be talking about with the NPOs and everyone? The first thing they will want to know is, do you know your risk? Your risk in your context, do you know your risk of abuse for TF by terrorists? Do you know that it exists? Which sectors are high risk, which are medium and everything? Because it all starts, a risk-based approach starts with the knowledge of risk. So what will be happening in our preparation will be teaching each other about risk and everything, but you should know your risk. What is the risk in Zimbabwe? Risk. Number 2, Then they'll discuss how we are working and so forth. They'll be trying to examine whether the risk-based approach that we are talking about, whether it is being implemented. Maybe they also talk about unintended consequences. How are you relating with your regulator? Is your regulator treating you fairly and so forth? And then things like that. But what we have to bear in mind is, it's our country that is being assessed. Zimbabwe is a country. In other words, it's all of us who are being assessed. It's not Mr. Tiriwai or the ministry or whatever. When grey list comes, it affects him less than it really affects all of us. You see? So if we've got problems, it's better we work on our problems before these visitors come. Or maybe we deal with each other after they are gone. You see? Mutual evaluation is not the place to settle scores with each other, because otherwise we'll burn the house that we all live in. Yeah. So that's all. I think I've talked about meeting with assessors. You have a right to request even to see what you have said to assessors. Before they write their report, you can say, what I've said, can I see how you have couched and so forth. In any case, the draft reports will be circulated. People will see and they will respond before these reports are discussed in plenary. Yeah. So after everything is said and done, a draft report on Zimbabwe's assessment will be done, and it will be circulated to authorities for their comment. It will go back to the assessors. It will be circulated to the global community. It will go to the FATF, to the IMF, to the World Bank, to all countries that are interested in the AML CFT cause. They will read the report, they will review, and they will put their comments therein, and assessors will be required to remember, when it is done and it is gone, it's no longer your report, it's their report. So they will be answering. If you have told them good things, they will be your defenders up there, you see. So that's what it is. So the draft report, then it will be finally submitted to plenary, where it will be discussed and adopted and subsequently posted on the SAMLAG and FATF website as Zimbabwe's report. They will be indicating all deficiencies, TC, and the effectiveness and key recommended actions that Zimbabwe needs to implement to improve effectiveness and technical compliance. These will be subjected to a follow-up process where we will be required to report on a regular basis on what we are doing. Again, if we fail to fully implement the outcomes, that might result in our grey listing or even blacklisting. So basically, I think that's all of my presentation. And
thank you. Thank you.